Hello. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, sorry about that slight technical hitch. Sorry. and another one. My name's Adrian Storey. I'm a director of photography, video producer, cameraman, video editor, and I sort of dabble in motion graphics stuff. I work under the name of Uchujin, which means alien in Japanese, because I lived in Japan for 10 years and Asian people find it difficult to pronounce my name because of the R. So Adrian gets flattened into alien, so alien. So, yeah, I'm just going to quickly tell you a little bit about me. In 1999, I left England to go to India, intending to stay for about 4 months, and ended up staying for almost 2 years. On my second day there, I met another English guy who was traveling, and that led to me becoming the sound engineer for the Dalai Lama. That's me in the bottom left-hand corner. That led to a sort of 5-year involvement with Tibetan Buddhism, which then precipitated a trip through Pakistan. This is in a place called Dara Adam Khel, and that little boy is making bullets. Up through Pakistan into Tibet to walk around a mountain called Mount Kailash, which is in western Tibet. This photo is from Drol Malar, which is the highest point on that walk, which is about 5,800 meters, that we did in our trainers. Well, there were lots of people with mountaineering gear who were looking at us like we were insane. I now realize we were insane. I then went to Nepal, where I lived in a monastery for a little while and studied more Buddhism. And then I went back to India. At that point, I'd kind of had enough of India, because it's kind of dirty and horrible. So I went to Thailand to get over being involved with Buddhism for 5 years. And I traveled a little bit in Cambodia, and then I met my wife, who is Japanese. And so I moved to Tokyo, where I lived for about 10 years. During living in Tokyo, I continued to travel quite a lot. I went to Jordan and various other places, and I met a journalist from the photojournalist from the New York Times called Jahadan Gar, who at the time was living in Nairobi in Kenya, and he said, "Oh yeah, you can come and stay in my house." So never one to pass up a free hotel. I went to Kenya to do a couple of different photo projects at the time there. And whilst I was there, I met an Italian documentary director called Vincent Cavallo, and we became good friends. I ended up staying in Kenya a lot longer than I planned. And that led to, about a year later, Vincenzo inviting me to go to Berlin to film, to be the director of photography on a feature documentary called Twende Berlin, which was about public art space and the relationship to public art space, where we took an African hip-hop band from Kenya and took them to Berlin in January. And they'd never seen snow or been anywhere it was that cold. And Vincenzo, in his utter generosity, had a separate apartment where he stayed for the 2 months we were in Berlin, but I had to live in the apartment with 6 large African hip-hop musicians, which was trying. But it was my first paid gig as a director of photography. So yeah, that leads us basically to really the 2 films that I'm going to talk mostly about today. The first of which is a film called Boys for Sale. Boys for Sale is a documentary about male sex workers in Tokyo. It was filmed in an area of Tokyo called Shinjuku Nichome, which is the largest concentration of gay and lesbian bars in the world. So what I think I'll do first of all is I'll show you the trailer for Boys for Sale. It's quite short, so and then I'll talk some more.
実践が何だろうって難しいな。
エスコートクラブですね。それが一番わかりやすいですかね。
売り線っていうのはまあ売買、体を売ってお客様を喜ばせるっていう仕事で、
売り線っていうのもたくさんあるんですけど、新宿2丁目の売り線っていうのは基本的にストレートの男の子たちが多いんですね。
顔を隠す形でお願いします。5人くらい同じ部屋でいます。
印象的なっていうところで言えば SM プレイター。
When I started having sex here, I wasn't using condoms, clients or not.
警視庁の偉い方、あとは政治家、知ってる人2人今来てるようですね。
気持ちいい、やられて気持ちいいランキングの1位が63歳のおじいちゃんでした。
The initial idea for Boys from Sale came from a friend of mine who was a documentary director in Tokyo, and we were talking, and he told me about these bars where essentially straight boys sold sex to mostly gay men, and they'd set up like a bar. So when I just thought this was a very interesting idea, and I'd spent some time in Nichime drinking because it's quite a fun place to go and drink. So we sort of decided that we'd try to do it. So there were some challenges in getting that to happen, because obviously this is that most of those people didn't want to talk to us on camera. And so we spent a year in pre-production going to those bars every 2 or 3 times a week for a year, talking to people and trying to convince them that we were going to do them justice and we weren't going to fuck them over, for want of a better phrase. And Ian, who was the the other person I was making the film with, always jokes that, you know, the entire first year's pre-production budget was spent on alcohol, none of which we drank. And so that was quite trying, but eventually after about a year we managed to get enough people to talk to us, which led to the next set of challenges, which was the production challenges of actually filming in the sex rooms where the boys had sex with their clients, which were not much bigger than a single bed, the actual room itself. And so we had me as a cameraman with 2 cameras, one of the boys and Ian, who was interviewing them, all in a tiny room, not much bigger than a single bed, in the summer in Japan, without the aircon on, because the aircon would mess up the audio. So I don't know if you've ever been to Japan, but Tokyo in the summer is 35 to 38 degrees and about 80% humidity in a room that's been used exclusively for sex. This is, it's it's odorous, I believe, would be the phrase. So eventually we managed to get all the footage we needed, and then we started on post-production. At that point, it was kind of decided that because we'd spent 2 years doing it, we were a bit too close to the material and we weren't really going to be able to pull the story out of it very well. So we, Ian and I decided that we would bring in a new director to cut the film. And at that point, I left Japan to move back to England. There's a brief bit of it in one of the in the trailer, but we didn't want to film any. That's a good soundtrack for gay sex, I think. We didn't want to film any of the boys with their clients because we thought it would be kind of exploitative, so we didn't really want to do that. So we were trying to figure out a way to illustrate their story. So it being a Japanese film, we decided that we were going to use manga or animation to do that. So an animator was hired who drew from the footage, but we'd obscured all the faces to protect the boys because a lot of them didn't want to show their faces. So that's how the anime came around. Yeah, so moving on, once it was finished, we submitted it to a lot of film festivals, and it's so far had a pretty good run. It's screened at about 35 international festivals now. We won Best Documentary at Playa del Carmen in Mexico, at the Oxford Film Festival in the United States, at El Lugar Sin Límite in Ecuador, and at Durban's Gay and Lesbian Film Festival. We also won a 20th Century Fox Award at Outfest in LA. Outfest is the biggest LGBTQ plus film festival in the world. Also got some quite nice quotes from various publications. My two that I particularly like on there, A Punch Between the Eyes, Storytelling You Daren't Turn Away From, which was from Raindance, which is a big festival in London, and Engrossing, Eye-Opening, Unflinching from the Huffington Post. So moving on to the next one of the films. Right at the end of the production of Boys for Sale, I started working on another film, which is called Traces of the Soul. Traces of the Soul is a film about calligraphy, 12 international calligraphers from all over the world. There's not a lot of crossover between the two films. So again, I'll show the trailer for Traces of the Soul, which is slightly longer, and then I'll talk a little bit about Traces of the Soul.
ある日本の哲学者がその書道とは凍った音楽だと。
In Latin, it just means beautiful writing, which isn't sufficient. It's far more than just words.
I've always thought of writing in this rhythmic way. And I always knew that there was a connection with the physical, and this connection extended into the spiritual.
脳がまず指令を出してるんですよ、自分の筋肉に。人それぞれこの信号と筋肉運動能力が違うんで、出来上がった字っていうのは人それぞれ違っちゃうっていうのが面白いですね。
When people see my work, they always try to read it and find out what is written. But my works are absolutely abstract. I don't write anything.
っていうのはメッセージといってもスローガンやアジテーションではないので、こちらから何か答えを見る人に示すようなことは避けたいと思っています。
Some journalists call me an alcoholic artist. They said your brush is drunk, ink is drunk, calligrapher is drunk also, so drunk together.
I don't see myself as a craftsman, but more as an artist, because I'm not doing decoration. I'm trying to raise topics in every art piece that I create. I want people to stand in front of a piece and reflect and try to question themselves.
#80でもダメだと思いますよ。90、100でないと。本当の書はね。練習の期間じゃないですか、今。
So to talk a little bit about Traces of the Soul, as I said, I was still living in Japan at the time, and I just got a random email from this guy asking if he could hire me to shoot some calligrapher about 200 miles from where I lived. And he said, oh, I don't have a lot of money, but it's quite an interesting project, and maybe you're interested. And he sent me the details. And usually when someone starts an email with, I don't have a lot of money, it gets deleted reasonably quickly. But in this case, I thought it was a genuinely interesting project. And then he'd attached his CV to the email. And so I thought, oh, well, I'll have a look, see who this guy is. And it was like 6 pages of credits working for the BBC over the past 20 years, editing lots and lots of stuff. And I thought, well, actually, this guy's probably pretty good at what he does. So I agreed to do the job for a significantly reduced fee, which I'm glad I did now. So after I returned the brushes from the first shoot, which was actually the very old gentleman at the end who says he's 90 but he's still practicing, I sent them back, and the director, whose name's Martin, was very happy, and so he hired me as the director of photography to complete the Japan production portion. There were 3 artists that we filmed within Japan, and so I managed to get all of that done. My end date for living in Japan was already set, so I had to do a lot of that before I left. And then when I moved back to the UK, which is about 2 years ago now, I'd already become quite good friends with Martin, and so he hired me as the DOP to complete the production of the film, and also as a producer, and then assistant editor. And I started doing some sort of motion graphics, VFX work for the film. So post-production, we completed post-production in January of this year, and that was interesting for me because I was assistant editing with a guy with 30 years experience, and we were doing it in a proper edit suite in London called Storm HD. when you're used to editing in your bedroom, editing in Storm HD is quite good fun because it's very well, and they have runners that bring you drinks whenever you ask for them and things. But what happened was I ended up, through a sort of set of conversations with Martin, becoming more involved in sort of motion elements that were needed for the film, and I did the title sequence, which unfortunately is not in that trailer, but there's a quite involved title sequence for the films that I did for that. And again, this has been submitted to a lot of film festivals. We're waiting for confirmation of acceptance into various film festivals, and we are also being shown to people at Arte and Canal in France, BBC4, Sky Arts, and a few other people. So we're just waiting to see what happens. Yeah, so like moving forward to the future for me, I'm very interested in a lot of technologies that have been on display here, virtual reality particularly, and 360 video and stereoscopic 360 video. So I'm very pleased to be here today and meet a lot of the very interesting people here doing lots of really interesting work, not just in that area, but in lots of different areas. I'm going to speed through this bit because those are my contact details, which you can either come up and ask me for, or I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and everywhere else, and I have a website. But what I want to do, just to finish off my short presentation here, is show a music video that I made last week using actually a 360 camera, and then was shot and heavily edited, as you'll see, but shot with a 360 camera and then turned into a little planet, which I'd seen done, but I hadn't seen done quite like this. So hopefully you'll enjoy this, and thank you for listening. And I'll play you out with the music, which is for a guy called Handbook, who is based in York, and he's on a French record label called Cascade Records, who I'd made some other music videos for in the past. And I'll just play it.